Have you ever given your highly sensitive teenager or tween feedback and it turns into something other than what you intended, and now it's out of your control? And it's overwhelming for both you and your child, simply because you offered some feedback or some correction, but the child is not able to receive it in the spirit that you sent the information. Now, I'm assuming that the spirit is love and truth. But if it's not, and you're saying, well, David just needs to be corrected, maybe you can get something from this video as well. I want to share with you how you can establish yourself as a loving presence while you are giving feedback to your child, giving correction to your child, so that you have a stronger relationship, so they can internalize your words in a different way, and in a way that's so effective that you don't even need to say it again. Maybe you just say it one word and they internalize the first time you said it so well that the second time you say it, it's like, oh, I know what that is. Okay? So, let's get into it. I remember when I was a young child, and there was a time before 8 years old where if I received feedback, I was okay. I was just like, okay, I could just go on. Probably before 7 years old. But there was one particular moment in my young childhood that really activated my sympathetic response to correction, to criticism, really, and to feedback. And so I remember being at a birthday party at school. And at this birthday party, all the kids were running around in the classroom. Now, I was raised right. Like, what are you talking about raised right? You talking about conservative? You talking about traditional? Whatever you want to say. My joke is, I was raised very rigid, and you did what you were told, okay? Now, some people say, well, that's not right, okay? I'm being funny. But anyhow, I was raised to be like, hey, don't go in the room loud, put your stuff down in the right place, sit, be quiet, speak when spoken to, make sure you greet everybody when you walk in the room, all of these things, okay? And some of those things are very valid still, okay? So, I'm this young child running around, 5 years old. We're having this birthday party, and I say, well, if they're running around, I can too, okay? My 5-year-old logic. And then I start to run a little bit, and one of the women in the classroom calls me an African American brat. And I didn't know what an African American brat was, because I didn't identify myself that way, and no one in my life identified me that way. But when this woman called me that, she's a Polynesian woman, I sunk inside of myself. Do you hear me? I was so saddened by those words, because it was not just the words. It was her tone, and it was her facial expression. She looked at me with so much contempt, and I just sunk. And that went into my memory capsules of don't take up too much space, be quiet, don't do anything to draw attention, negative attention. And I didn't even know what negative attention was at 5 years old. But my mind began to understand the environment this way. And so that memory became part of my understanding of self. At a young age, became part of my concept. Okay? So I go on in that moment, just stuck. 5 years old. And there was no other adult in the classroom. I didn't even make a series on how I hated kindergarten. And how that fuels the work that I do today. Okay? My hair shrinks so much. Anyway, so I'm gonna make a series on how I hated kindergarten and why. and why I fuse social emotional learning with academic support, content knowledge development, okay? Content knowledge application. So in that moment, and I had to go to therapy for this, okay? I talked about it happened at 5, but 30 years later, I was in therapy talking about it. And I wanted to just be with my dad, because he's the one that picked me up and dropped me off at school while my mom was at work. And I don't think I ever talked about it, because I didn't know how to talk about it. I was 5 years old. Now, what does this mean for you as parents? This means that your child is experiencing things at school that you have no knowledge of and you have no control over. Oh my goodness, that is so upsetting. No knowledge and no control. That's why some parents go up to the school fighting. I don't condone it. And I understand why some people do the things that they do. Don't condone it though. Parents, let's talk before you go up to the school, okay? But these things are happening and they're impacting your child's self-concept. Now, if you have a highly sensitive child, your child as well is taking in information from the environment, not always talking about what's happening to them, and they're not making sense of their experiences in a way that helps them to grow in the direction of their purpose, okay? And so when we talk about purpose for kids, it's so much bigger than do this because you do. No. We talk about divine purpose is so much bigger. And we as adults have to humble ourselves to watch the natural course of development and how the Most High is speaking through this child and working through this child and working through our relationship and then working in our lives, because it's so multifaceted. So how do you, as a parent, as an educator, as a service provider, connect with this child when they're having experiences outside of your knowledge and outside of your control? You want to establish yourself as a loving presence. And you say, I say this in love. I say this in love. And you don't have to say that every time, but if you allow that tone to radiate from you, it will be felt, and your child will know exactly where you're coming from. Our faces are designed to send signals to one another. And I think we know this, but we forget how profound this is, because we just need to do what's on our list to do next. But our faces have an evolutionary purpose to send messages to one another. And we know this because we can just look at somebody a certain way and know, or they'll, so it's fascinating. And when you're communicating with that young person, you want to use your face as a tool to connect, as a bridge, not a wall, okay? Your voice should be preparing a table. Ooh, I want to run down the street. Your voice should be preparing a table for that child in the presence of their enemies. My God. Oh, hallelujah. I'm over here. That is so exciting, because we have that power, especially as Christ-minded people. We have that power to prepare a table. So when we say, I say this in love, and we continue to establish ourselves as a loving presence, then you say, well, I'm noticing, okay? And tell me if I'm wrong. I say this in love, I'm noticing, ... tell me if I'm wrong. Now, if your child is flat out wrong, you want to say, you know what, you did this thing yesterday, and I want to offer you something. And say it, the facts, okay? You did this thing, and I want to offer you some feedback. Next time, try this. Or next time, do it this way. You'll save time. And when you give that feedback, you're always connecting it to the bigger picture. You're always connecting it, because the child is very present and they don't have a concept of the future and the past and the present the way that we do. Everything is right here and right now, and they're operating in their limbic system more than they're operating in the prefrontal cortex, because the prefrontal cortex is still developing. Okay? So when you are speaking to your child, establishing your presence, and you may say, well, Ashley, how do you do that? You know, what happens if I haven't had that done for me? Keep watching my videos and they will support you in making that journey, because this is important. I want you to be successful in your connection with your students, with your children, because they are going to remember you. Let's give them something wonderful. Let's give them something marvelous to remember. Okay? And even when you make a mistake, not if, because you will, when you make a mistake, you need to go back and say, you know what? I was wrong. The child will, really? The Almighty is wrong? And I say the Almighty because in their eyes, you are pretty big. Okay? Now, the second thing I want to say I say this in love. I got that from Minister Farrakhan. I was listening to him speak in a video 20 years ago or more. And Black preachers have a way of speaking that's neurologically very powerful. It speaks to your whole system, neurophysiology, in such a powerful way, to where there's a cadence that's established, and then the listeners can predict what their person's going to say, and they can say it with them. Okay? And so he said, I say this in love. I say this in love. And as he said it maybe the fourth time, and they were able to get it, and they said in love with him. And so when you are speaking to your child, when you're modeling for your child, you want to be able to say this, and your child can predict in love. And love is not this ooey gooey, you know, no truth, no structure, no boundaries type of love. No. We're talking about being rooted and expanded, guided, protected, provided for by the Most High, recipients of His grace and His mercy, extending that as part of our lifeline. That type of love, that's profound. That's prolific. That's the type of love I'm talking about. Okay? When you give that to your child, when you model that to your child, you give them a better life. Okay? You give them a better life. So, you want to establish yourself as that presence. And if you say, well, Ashley, I don't have that model, practice with yourself. That's great news. You can practice with yourself. When you see yourself making mistakes, so you got to be an observer of yourself. And when you see yourself making a mistake, catch yourself. Don't put yourself down. Don't condemn yourself. Just catch yourself, okay? Catch yourself. Oh, I did that again. Get back on track. Let me get back on. It's that simple. Let me just get back on track. The thing that takes a little bit longer is the interpretation, the perceptions, the emotions, what we thought, our expectations, all that. Okay? That takes a little bit longer. That's the part that's really heavy and big, and we got to drag that back drag it back to the center. But really, the more you practice being in that center, in Christ, He said, abide in me and I will abide in you. As you practice being in that center, and you say, Mother God, give me guidance, then you will experience that expansiveness. And you say, Ashley, Mother God is a mother. Okay? So, get back on track. See? What you may have a problem with that. Just get back on track. See, that was a test. Okay? But we get back on track. And we have to be in the place of balance within ourselves. When you catch yourself, you just say, oh, I did it again, and get back on track. With one of my fourth graders, I checked in with her after correcting her behavior. And when I correct behavior, I correct it like that. So they know it's nothing personal. And everybody gets the same treatment. Checked in with her afterward, and I said, I care about you, right? And she knows, so she says yes. And then I said, do I want you to stay off track or get back on track? She said, get back on track. I said, oh, okay. So when I correct you, what can you do? Get back on track. That's it. It's not about punishing her, teaching her a lesson, all this stuff, because sometimes we try to teach kids lessons the way we've been taught. So much of what we do is balancing the scales or promoting someone's program they put on us, and we have to be mindful of that, because that promotes misery and instability, and it's bad. Okay, so get back on track. And then the compassion you're able to extend, the self-compassion, the self-understanding, it's got to go somewhere. It can't stay with you. You got to let it flow out, because that's how it keeps coming in. If you are practicing self-love, self-compassion, self-understanding, and it's not going anywhere, you are jammed up, you're going to be jacked up, and you don't want to be that way. You want to let it flow. Let it flow. And then, as you are in that circulation, nobody can hold their breath forever. And nobody can not inhale forever. You have to inhale, exhale. Okay? And that's how you begin to expand yourself as a loving presence within yourself and to your child, that student, that child, that mentee, whatever the young person is to you. Okay? I'm gonna pause there because that's a lot of information. Okay, you've gotten what you can do with that child, which is establish yourself as a loving presence. I say this in love and speak, validate emotionally, speak to the right. Okay, I know this is a challenge for you, and I want to say this in love. I know this is disappointing for you, and I want to say this in love. I know this is frustrating for you, and I want to say this in love. And I say this in love. I say this in love. So validate the emotion, say it in love. Your child will be able to predict, and they will know if you are being sincere. If you're a person of integrity, they'll know, okay, yeah, I know. Even if my dad or my mom or my auntie says, I know where they're coming from. That is what you want to establish, where you're coming from. And then no matter where your child goes, they know you're with them. I bless you. I want the best for you, and I see you in the next video.